This is ArtMingle, Insight to Impact. I am your host, Mika Heikkilä. Many know me as the artist Mika Oulu. ArtMingle is where culture meets communities and economy. We speak plainly, we follow evidence, we ask how ideas become choices that people keep. Subscribe and join community that turns cultural insights into action. Today's guest is Pauli Sivonen, director of the Serlachius Museums in Mänttä, Finland. He has shaped a museum that confronts industrial heritage while championing environmental responsibility and ambitious art. Under his guidance, Serlachius has become both a local anchor and an international touchpoint, showing how culture in a small town can spark wider conversations about identity, economy and climate. Welcome, Pauli.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Before we get into the strategy, can you share a moment when you realized Serlachius wasn't just a workplace, but a community you were shaping?
That's a very interesting question. I was born in Helsinki, and I never thought that I would be living in such a small place. That was really a surprise for me. They invited me to work here I think that was year 2000. I had been working in Hannover before that in Finnish Expo pavilion at the World Expo at that time. And then Gustav Serlachius called me and asked me if I would like to come to Mänttä and found a new museum there. And for me, it was supposed to be only a gig, and I was really going to return to Helsinki or somewhere else. But somehow when I kind of moved to Mänttä to take care of the project, I was at that time living not only in Mänttä, but partly in Porvoo, where my family was at that time. I, anyhow, of course, had to start spending more and more time in Mänttä, and of course the resources that the Serlachius Foundation had were very important in many ways when we were doing this project, and I somehow just got to know the small town better and better, and kind of fell in love with it, and also was like welcomed very generous and nice ways to the local community, and started spending more and more time here. And here I am actually 25 years after, so it's something happened in between, and now I'm not considering to leave Mänttä. I'm not only here, I'm actually living partly in Vienna in Austria, but maybe that's the kind of, we will probably be talking more about global and local, in this conversation more. So this is my short story of me and Mänttä.
How culture drives sustainable systems? It's the next thing where we diving. So when Serlachius launched Responsible Serlachius, what was the defining moment that turned sustainability from a side project into the museum's guiding principle?
Well, of course, we are living in the midst of climate crisis, and everybody has to do something. For me, it has been very much like a personal choice also, but of course, I'm representing here an institution, so it's institutional policies first and foremost. But at some point, I was kind of wondering what is the relationship between museums and climate crisis in general. And actually, museums want to say very often that museums are kind of good guys. We represent good ideals and are doing good things for societies and communities. But actually, because we are taking so good care of our collections, we are using very much electricity, for example, because we have to have a very stable, the atmosphere inside the collection spaces has to be very stable. And then I actually counted at some point how much electricity are our museums using. And it is quite a lot. It's like, I don't remember, was it something like equals 250 normal Finnish single family houses or something. So the museums as such are almost like a small town. And then we started our project. It has been like a very long path to us. And we did this in many ways, just first trying to understand what we can do ourselves, but then, of course, using external help like consults helping us. And, well, then we started the work.
What internal trade-offs or resistance did you face, and how did you move through them?
Of course, inside the institution, the thing is that most of our staff members and board members first and foremost think that we are a museum, we are a cultural institution. Our job is to work in this field, but then understanding that if we want to continue this job, we have to take climate crisis seriously. And so because of course it's like when we start working with these issues, it means that each and every one of us has to spend significant amount of our working time for this subject in a way. So it takes time and it takes resources, and we have actually used millions of euros for this thing, which we could have used in, for example, buying art. So we had to kind of explain this to ourselves that it's super important to continue on this path.
What sustainable measure, energy, water, transport, or materials has delivered the clearest win others could copy tomorrow?
First of all, if I start with in a way more structural way, what we did was we didn't try to do all this by ourselves, but we decided that we will use certification. We took this ISO 14001 certification, in which the key idea is that we go through all our operation, what we are doing, and try to measure our environmental impact or impacts of our operation, all our operations. And as I mentioned earlier, of course, our biggest sin in a way is that we are using quite much electricity for heating and cooling our premises, our real estate, both 2 museums and 3 big warehouses and workshops that we have here in Mänttä. We were kind of thinking how to do it in more in a better way, and we decided that we will start changing the system into geothermal energy, which is here in Finland, as you probably know, very popular system. And we are now I would say halfway in this process, that we changed one of our museums, Serlachius headquarters, into geothermal energy system, and we will do it later in Serlachius Manor also, which is the other museum. But it really reduced our carbon footprint significantly. Then we have been doing all kinds of other things, for example, installing solar power plant, and we are continuing this work. So now we actually are selling electricity into the national network in summertime. And we are studying systems, how to continue, how to use modern battery systems, which make it even more better, this system. And then all kinds of recycling and things like that, and also transport to the museum, because we are not measuring only our what we are doing ourselves in our museums, but of course we also have to consider the impact of our visitors coming to Mänttä, because we are a travel destination, meaning that most people come to our museum from far away. And Finns actually, this is a big country. Finns love to come here by cars, so we created a system. We called it Serlachius bus. Kind of public transport from Tampere to Mänttä. And also nowadays we are using taxis, like you can book a taxi from or share taxi from our online pages and so on. So all these kind of things.
It's very creative. I assume the visitors, that area remains probably the hardest to shift, I believe. Or what would you say?
The thing is, as I said, we are here in the, as we often say, middle of the nowhere. It's almost 300 kilometers from Helsinki, 100 kilometers from Tampere, and 100 kilometers from Jyväskylä. These are the nearest cities. Our visitors, they come, 1/3 of them come from Helsinki area, 1/3 of them come from this near region between Tampere and Jyväskylä, and 1/3 of them from everywhere else. So this is like a big thing. And if we think, like to put it like very abruptly, sometimes we are bringing artists and curators from Helsinki to bring their art and exhibitions to Mänttä and present them here, and then we also invite people from Helsinki to see this art. So it's like in a way, if we think about that mathematically, it doesn't make sense. So we really have to try to make something for this problem. I guess we are later speaking also about why is it important that people from big cities also come to countryside, but as such. But yeah, this is like mathematically considered, this is a big problem.
What about the wins or gains? What kind of gains have you had, and what have been the biggest win? Is it reputational or staff morale, or it's probably not financial gain, I would assume?
Well, actually, it is all of this. Of course, like everyone wants to be a good guy, so reputation, that's an important part of this big game in a way, but it's also like influencing when we are doing these things and sharing our results very openly. It's part of the big discourse that this society and this community is going through with when we are considering our identity amidst climate crisis. But actually, it's like when we are investing money into these things, it's also coming back, because, as I said, for example, geothermal energy, it's much more cheap. When you have made this investment, it starts to pay back, like a solar power plant also does. So all of this.
So how transferable is this to other museums or even to small municipalities?
I think these are like, you can, when you are thinking about climate crisis, everyone has to do something, and you have to do things that are within your reach in a way that you can, which you can not only plan but also implement. So you just have to consider your means, your strategies, your capabilities, and then do what you can. But for example, museums, now we have only been speaking about what we are doing to very practically to reduce our carbon footprint. But of course, the main thing that museums are doing is that we are also working as influencers. We are organizing exhibitions and showing art in our museums which speak about climate crisis. So this is like being an influencer is maybe even closer to our core identity as a cultural institution.
Yeah. Have you tried any technologies or design tweaks that surprised you in their effect?
I wouldn't say so because these are, in a way, so big things that you really have to plan things carefully. And when we have been working with these issues, I mentioned that we did it to the certification system, ISO 14001, and this is like a tested area in many ways because this is this certification system that we are using. It's used by big, like really big companies, and they have been using a lot of money to develop those systems. So we actually knew very clearly what we are doing. When we are working in within our own field, art and culture, that's more like innovation and things like that. But within these very basic things that we've been doing, no surprises so far.
Let's change a little bit topic. In Mänttä, how has Serlachius moved from being just a museum to becoming cultural infrastructure for the town?
That's been part of a bigger project that started actually before I came to Mänttä. It was in late 1990s when Mänttä was going through really radical change because at that time paper industry was a big structural change in Finnish paper industry, and Mänttä as such very small place, kind of super small paper mills within the industry itself. And then there was economical depression, and this was happening everywhere in Finland. And the big companies started to merge, and Serlachius company as such was merged into its bigger competitor. And the Mänttä ceased to be like the head office town of industrial company. So they started shutting down the mills actually here in Mänttä. And at that time, people here really, they had to kind of think about their identity. What are we? Because Mänttä used to be like super important place compared to its size. And for example, it was also a kind of a very rich place because there were not only the big company directors and shots who were big taxpayers, but also industrial workers. So still during the 1980s, Mänttä was in the statistics like seen of the amount of the rich taxpayers. Mänttä was almost something like second or third of the Finnish municipalities. But then in one night it happened that Mänttä started losing this position. And then, now I'm coming to the point, then people here had to decide whether this is an industrial town in decay or a cultural town starting to bloom. So we have been kind of using these metaphors of descent and takeoff in a way, because there happened to be also some cultural institutions in Mänttä. People started thinking that, oh, let's play this card now. And then it has been not only our museums, but there are also many cultural festivals like Mänttä Art Weeks, Mänttä Music Festival, and nowadays many more things. It seems to be that good things somehow start to pile up in a way. So this was maybe even like a kind of a identity crisis of the local small town that led into this kind of thinking that we have to do something differently.
Thank you for listening. I make ArtMingle for people like you who build culture. Get the inside article and the short brief at mikaoulu.com/artmingle. Follow me on LinkedIn, join the newsletter, bring a colleague with you next time. How do locals from city leaders to residents and businesses describe your role today then?
Well, Serlachius is of course like a prime motor in a way uh, in this thing, because we are like a big cultural institution. Nowadays, our staff is 50 plus, and we have maybe more resources than the other local players in this field. But then again, when we here in Mänttä are developing Mänttä as an art town, we don't kind of consider where each player gets his salary, but we are doing this together. As I mentioned, there are other institutions nowadays. And also like the municipality has during the last years especially taken much bigger role here. When I came here, it seemed that the municipality was quite happy with the situation as such, and they kind of maybe considered it so that things are going fine without them, and they can concentrate on other things. But now that the municipality has defined in its strategy it very clearly that culture is the main source of the vitality of the whole municipality. They are also playing this card more carefully now.
Can you share a before-after story where an exhibition or program has clearly changed how Mänttä has been seen, either by locals or by visitors?
It's kind of a little bit hard to put this thinking in, like take a single project or something. Maybe, of course, because, well, how should I put it? Maybe Mänttä nowadays is, it's not so important what are our individual exhibitions, as long as we made them through the quality that we make all our projects in a way. Of course, sometimes we need to do this kind of blockbusters that bring even more people, visitors to the museums. For example, when we opened our Banksy exhibition a couple of years ago, we had something like 150,000 visitors in Mänttä during this year. And I need to remind you that the town itself has less than 10,000 inhabitants. So it's 15 times the inhabitants of the town. And these kind of blockbusters, they may be their main reason for existence is that we try to widen our audiences with them, those people who would never come to see just a random art exhibition or random historical exhibition, this kind of projects that become a topic in let's say ordinary workplaces, coffee tables, that do you know they have this thing in Mänttä, we should go there also. But then, for example, this year we opened altogether 9 exhibitions, big international projects like Keith Tyson and De Kiriko, a very interesting Ukrainian artistic collective open group speaking about super topical subjects, but our visitor number is pretty much the same as last year. So it really has to be something big, something blockbuster that we can make the visitor number even bigger. But we don't actually even try to do it every year. Maybe it's not wise. And maybe it's against our environmental policies also. Actually, we would be quite happy if the visitor number would be something like 100,000 a year, like every year.
Art can also trigger economic ripple effects. What's one example where you saw tourism, jobs, or local pride grow directly from Serlachius?
That is a problem. I need to confess, if I'm like totally direct here, that it's kind of a difficult situation because still people are moving out from Mänttä. So the inhabitant number is decreasing year by year. So meaning it's really like difficult for local businesses to survive really nowadays, and we see it happening all the time that when small shops, for example, when the keepers or owners of these shops they retire, it's super difficult to find someone who continues the business, and there are not so many people still like although this is culturally very vibrant and vital town nowadays, people go shopping elsewhere. So and for example it's very important for us also that there are hotels inside Mänttä, and there are actually 3 hotels right now working here, but it's super difficult for them to survive during the winter months because cultural tourism happens here mainly in the summertime. 2/3, for example, of our visitors come during the free summer months. So it's not so easy to kind of find very clear success stories here where culture actually would have saved some local businesses or things like that.
Well, let me put it this way. Would there be those 3 hotels without Serlachius in Mänttä now?
Probably not. Probably not. I must say that this tourism that we are bringing to the city, to the town, it's might be the decisive factor here.
I would like to go a little bit more on that. Like I believe it's kind of success story also for Mänttä. So do you see it like that way also?
Yes, Mänttä is like maybe one of the best examples here in Finland, how small towns, municipalities or cities can create their identity again through culture. But I must remind you that it's not the only one. There are quite many other places like this in Finland, like Savonlinna, Kuhmo, Kajaani, Ikaalinen, Naantali, Sastamala, Fiskars maybe. And what is common with these places that they kind of that there are some people who, for example, like opera very much, and then they want to have a festival. And Finns, because most of the Finns nowadays, they live in big cities, but their roots still are in countryside, and they love to travel during the countryside, during the summer to countryside. So it's easy to kind of seduce them to come to countryside in the summertime, and those cities and small towns, they are good examples that things can happen also outside the big cities and metropolises.
Is there a lesson here for other small towns who are hoping to replicate this kind of success?
Maybe one of the lessons is that you cannot create it from nothing, or then you have to be like really creative person. It's better to try to understand that what is the identity of the small place, what the people have been doing there. And for example, if I take our Mänttä as an example, visual arts, which is the biggest thing here in Mänttä, it wasn't like it had like very clear traditions in Mänttä. That Serlachius family was an eager art collector and had been having this small, more like a maybe still early 80s, you could say that it was kind of an ivory tower as a museum, but still it existed. So you can start building bigger things when you have something to start with.
When thinking of local stories versus global exhibitions, what tells you this belongs in Mänttä right now?
Mänttä is a place where local and global really meet, I would say, because, for example, when we founded the Serlachius headquarters in early 2000, I think we opened the doors in 2003. With this museum, we had the very clear idea that we want to tell the local story of Mänttä. But then when we are telling the local story of Mänttä, in our case, it means very much global thinking, because Serlachius company already was working in a very global context. And when Serlachius family was acquiring art, they were not acquiring art from Mänttä, but like big international artists from like Dutch art history or Spanish or Italian artists. And so there is in a way very natural dialogue between local and global here in Mänttä. And it still happens in a way, because now we have, for example, the museums have a very like ambitious international program that we are inviting international big names, big star artists to Mänttä. But very often when they come to Mänttä, they kind of even fall in love with our local story and start making their art from our local stories in a way. This has happened like many times. It's happening all the time. And we very often also invite them to study our archives in our museums and study our history, and then they like make art pieces commenting these things. Not only the Finnish artists, but also international artists.
Then a little bit about inclusion. What strategy has worked best for engaging audiences who don't usually see themselves in museums? Rural youth, minorities, or non-art audiences?
We of course welcome anyone coming to museums, but like any institution, cultural institution, we are of course nowadays thinking very much about our audiences, and the inclusion has been like the biggest thing in the strategy and philosophies of museums. We are doing all the kinds of same things as other museums in this field, but then again we have to remember that we are far away and it's difficult to come here, so we in a way cannot, as I said, we cannot consider our identity only through an image of being a cultural institution, but we are also a touristic destination. But all this just means that we have to work in many levels, and this means that we, for example, work with the local school kids. We invite them very actively to the museums. We work with all kinds of minorities, and then we invite just anyone, and we have to do this through different kinds of projects, having different kinds of exhibitions that speak to all these audiences.
Looking 10 years ahead, which emerging practices feel non-negotiable for museums? Digital, climate adaptation, or partnerships?
Here what is non-negotiable is that we need to, although we are like thinking very much about our identity as a travel destination, and although we are doing big digital projects and so on, but what is really non-negotiable is that we need to stay where we are, our true identity, and that this means that we appreciate our collection items, our artworks, which are really like paintings and sculpture and all other techniques of art. So this is something that we cannot never like forget. the art is the basis, and the history and the historical objects, they are the basis of our identity.
Every museum decides whose stories to tell. Which voices or perspectives do you feel are still missing from Mänttä's cultural narrative?
This is a difficult question because we have been really trying to hear as many voices as possible. For example, we have been doing many kinds of oral history projects, collecting narratives from, most often they have been happening in connection with our exhibition projects, but also otherwise. And at some point, if I think it in local context, I would say that at some point I was thinking that there are no more people in Mänttä whom we could interview in a way in our oral history projects, because we've got them through all. But maybe, for example, now there are more and more people coming to Mänttä. For example, it was a big surprise for me that we have 200 Ukrainian refugees here in Mänttä. We just happened to want to do a big project with, I mentioned it earlier, with a Ukrainian artist group called Open Group. That's an art piece that I first saw in Venice Biennale in Polish Pavilion last year. It's a super interesting piece in which the artists are making a kind of a karaoke piece with the Ukrainian refugees in the first version made in 22 in the city of Lviv, and then in the second version made in 24 all over the world. They went to interview Ukrainian refugees and asked them to repeat the voices or sounds of war. Like, for example, these refugees, they were at home and they heard tank coming, and then they need to kind of say a tank sounds like this, and then they ask the visitors of the exhibition to repeat this sound. Anyhow, we had this exhibition this year in Mänttä. And only then someone in our staff asked me that, Pauli, did we invite the Ukrainian refugees of Mänttä to the opening? And I'm like, oops, did we forget them? This is like a shame. And then we started studying this, how many refugees there are in Mänttä, Ukrainian refugees, and they are like something like 200 here in this small town. And then we organized a special event to them, inviting them, and it was like a very, very interesting day. We invited them to this exhibition, and then we had a Ukrainian curator talking with them, and it was a very touching moment when these Ukrainian refugees start telling their stories. And this was a good example in a way that we have a project that we want to do for some reasons. In this case, very clear political reason, because museums want to speak about politics also, and we felt that what is the thing that we want to speak this year, it's of course the Russian aggression happening in Ukraine right now. And then only after planning and implementing this project, we understand that we actually have a very special local audience here in Mänttä to whom this project means a lot. And so this was like an eye-opening experience for us in many ways.
Then you also have exhibitions where you are revisiting the town's industrial legacy. How do you balance pride and critique when telling that story?
Industrial legacy, of course, is super important for Mänttä and for Serlachius Foundation, because it's our kind of basic story. It all starts from there. So this is why we For example, in our headquarters, we always have their exhibitions telling about the industrial past of Mänttä, and it's also super important for us that it's not only from the viewpoint of Serlachius family or the old owners of Serlachius company, but it has to be from the working class culture and population also. So this is the story we always tell, and we are ourselves very proud of it in a way. And I think that the population of Mänttä also have taken it in a way quite seriously, because if I think this in a historical context, for example, I already mentioned that in 1980s the museum, Serlachius Museum here in Mänttä, was considered by the local population also to be a sort of ivory tower. It was not, the museum was not a place where local Mänttä industrial workers would have entered themselves, because it was kind of an enemy camp in a way, because that was in these times, these small towns, they were very polarized places. We speak very much about polarization in our contemporary context, but there were very much camps of us and them during these times also. So it has been very, very important for Serlachius Art Foundation that we try to amend in a way this situation and try to make all Mänttä people, everyone living in Mänttä kind of proud of this tradition and this history, which is like our common heritage, belongs to everyone living here in Mänttä.
Then one change for policymakers now to strengthen the cultural economy.
I usually try not to tell the policymakers what they should do. We kind of consider our role just to do our job as well as we can in a way. And it's also like very difficult. If I think about policymakers here in Mänttä, in our context, we understand that the municipality has less and less money all the time, and it's really a big problem for them how to take part in this common project of making Mänttä a blooming cultural city. But in fact, they have been quite clever in this thing by themselves. For example, trying to collect money from outside, from different foundations, for example, and the municipality of Mänttä-Vilppula right now, they are creating more and more projects and introducing more and more projects, and with this kind of funding. So it seems that they don't need my advices. Here we can be happy, but I think it comes from the thing that everyone here in Mänttä understands that this is the only way out of the crisis that this town has been facing since 1990s.
One message to communities using culture for development.
Just continue good work in a way, because it's happening everywhere here in Finland. It's people seem to believe in it. I'm like I kind of want to be very positive here, not just saying it because it sounds good, but I see a lot of good developments all over Finland. Of course, we are going through like a super difficult times, and our government is reducing the amount of cultural funding everywhere. But then I believe in this kind of own initiatives that you can build if you believe in what in your own identity and in your own capabilities and in your own stories. Just continue working with them.
To end, one book, article, or cultural experience that inspired you lately.
I'm right now reading a book, Vitality from Culture. I wrote a small essay myself into it myself, and this is actually a collection of, it's edited by Yrjö Sotamaa, came out this year, and it's kind of a collection of essays in which people from many small places in small municipalities and smaller cities in Finland come from. So it's I would recommend that book.
Thank you so much, Pauli. It's been amazing to have you as a guest.
Thank you.
I am delighted that you were here with me. Thank you for giving your time and attention. New episodes bring practical ideas you can use, clear takeaways, shareable materials. Follow the show, join the newsletter, and tell about ArtMingle to one friend who cares about culture and communities. I am Mika Heikkilä, also known as the artist Mika Oulu. ArtMingle, Insight to Impact. See you next time.